Maitai River runs right through the lifetime of Fred Shallcrass. He grew up living just above the Baptist camp and later became caretaker at the waterworks that preceded the 1987 Maitai Dam. Fred explains that his parents had to leave their Muturi repatriation farm in the Depression and retreated to his mother's family batch up the Maitai Valley.
We arrived in the old batch. We had no power, no running water, no telephone, and you had to come through the river, the ford, every time we wanted to come through down the valley. So you had to come through the Maitai River if you wanted to get down to go to school. Because if the river came a flood, it stopped everything. See? So we were brought up on there. We had no bedrooms. We all slept on the veranda. Out on the front, we had a veranda. It's an old house with big veranda. We slept out there winter, the whole year round.
Fred's father set up a business running a taxi service that doubled as the school bus, using what we'd now call a large vintage car.
Yeah, it was a Hudson Super 6, and they were a big American car with big dicky seats in them, and they were about 2.5 tonne empty. They were big cars, they were huge cars. He had 2 of them. So he came back and then he started running a business which he would pick up people from Nile Street and tell them the whole history of the Maitai, right up to the bottom of the mocha tap. He would boil them a cup of tea and make tea, and then we'd bring them right down the valley. He did a morning trip, an afternoon trip, and then when his taxi business, he would take all the kids to school, which they pay now, same as you do a bus now. They pay to take them to school, Tasman Street. And then after that, the Sunday Hole Ford was down the bottom, and they started the golf course. And the first golf course started, Dad used to take the golfers from the Sunday Hole Ford to the golf house if the river was in flood, because they couldn't get through the river to go and play the golf, see?
Fred and his siblings couldn't join sports teams as they had to be at Ferguson's store in Nile Street to be picked up by the school bus. But they found plenty to amuse them up the valley.
Directly in behind the house, we had a swimming pool. So what my father did when he first came back, he must have gone down to the airport and he bought petrol tanks out of the wings of the aeroplane, and we used to have them in the river for rafts.
Fred recalls catching possums and trout fishing for hours and hours, though he says the fish weren't huge.
I think about 3 pound were the biggest fish you would get in the Maitai. They're all little ones. And in those days you could catch a 10-inch trout if you were under 15. Humphrey Belton was a doctor, Dr. Belton. He used to fish from Charlton to the Maitai camp, and my area from the Maitai camp to Polford Bridge. We never ever fished in each other's area. That was a great area. But I could go and catch fish. I used to catch a lot from my mother.
Fred Shallcrass, one of those whose story is entwined with Nelson's Maitai Valley.